Oh, this is so fantastic. And we are the last panel, so we stand between you all and
drinks.
drinks. So this is going to be fun. It is an honor to be up here with three dynamic tribal leaders in this space that have been engaged with offshore wind for the last, well, since it began. And can I just say, just right off the bat, that can we get some women's dress shoes that look as good as these? Great dress shoe game going on up here. So this panel is Tribal Nation Perspectives, Partnerships, Co-Management Structures related to offshore wind development. What we're here to talk about today is really solutions for some of the concerns and the opportunities that have been raised in years past, and could not have a better panel to discuss this all with. I want to introduce Sam Cohen, Government Affairs and Legal Officer for the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. Philip Williams, Council Member for the North District of the Yurok Tribe, and Jason Ramos, Council Member and Acting Chairperson, Blue Lake Rancheria Tribe. And thank you, gentlemen, all for being here. A round of applause. So I'm going to start out with Councilmember Williams. And I have a script, but then we're immediately going to go off it because that's what we do. The Yurok tribe has been an early actor and national leader in nature-based and market-based climate solutions, like becoming the first tribal government to complete a forest carbon offset protocol for sequestration, and, of course, the removal of the Klamath River dams. I want to ask, how should we be thinking about climate change solutions on the short timeline we need to reduce carbon emissions, and any of the ideas we have for bridging that to offshore wind and some structures that we need to build in this space?
Sure. Thank you, Jana. As mentioned, I'm Councilmember Philip Williams from the Yurok tribe. And as you mentioned, we have some great accomplishments that the past leaders of the past have championed for us, and I'm standing on the shoulders of our past leaders, some of which have dedicated their lives to championing, Yurok tribe issues. First of all, what comes to mind is what we're doing at the Yurok tribe. We're climate change people, we're environmental people, and we take our role on the Klamath River and the Yurok Reservation to protect the animals, the citizens, and the environment from extraction or from mismanagement. What we're trying to do with the Yurok tribe is we have communities that still don't have electricity. One district has 80% of the citizens do not have electricity or broadband or sustainable water supply. Another district has 50% of that community does not have electricity. But we've been working on this for a long time. Now that we're becoming more climate conscious, we're looking at opportunities to create microgrids for those communities, not only just to give them reliable power, but also get it to operate by itself, so it can sustain itself, so we can resell some of that energy. We look at another project that we're trying to get off the ground is, we have elders that they live on a minimum amount of retirement, and so when your energy bill is $300 a month, and they're probably only getting about $800 a month, it makes it tough on them. And so what my colleagues have looked into doing is we want to put solar panels on every elder home to offset some of that cost. It's our part, for climate change, but it's also for our tribal citizens. We're looking at many, many different ways to create energy. Hydro, we have creeks and opportunities to do hydro technology also within our reservation. We're putting in a new water system. We got 3 phases, and we got funded for the first phase. And it's going to be like $60 million project to give that community reliable water. So when we're creating that, why couldn't we create some type of hydrology generating technology to help that? So that's some of the work that we're doing alongside, we're really involved in restoration, river restoration. And so we have cleaned up from the gold mining, the hydrological mining that happened on our rivers, devastated our fish populations. And so now we've created an industry to where we're the leaders, and we're making this economic development opportunity to fix the environment. We're cleaning up all the logging devastation that happened, the clear-cut logging that happened on our land. We're cleaning that up, and that's part of the funding that we used from the carbon sequestration projects. Mm-hmm. We put that back into our forest and manage our forest. And the long-term goal, we still want to continue to create that workforce so that our tribal citizens can work on their own lands, cleaning it up. And we're more vested in this community than anybody else. There's nobody else better to do this work than our people.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Ramos, I'm going to turn to you. The Blue Lake Rancheria tribe is a climate action champion, has garnered national and international acclaim for its climate strategies and clean energy transitions, including its stewardship of the Badawat or Mad River watershed. I think one of the things that we've talked about, you and I have talked about, is that in this moment with respect to offshore wind and other industries that are being developed, what are the structures or the partnership opportunities that you see around economic enterprise development, and any guidance that you would have for the audience? We know tribal nations make extraordinary partners in the economic development space, and I think the offshore wind conversation, frankly, hasn't included enough of that topic. So turn it to you for your thoughts.
Sure thing. So I think it's important to understand that when you get north of Sacramento or San Francisco, it's a resource-based environment, right? And part of that also is this conversation about personal wealth and about personal earnings. So when you look at the poorest counties in the state of California, Humboldt County ranks 8th. And when you look at the counties that surround us, Del Norte, Trinity, Siskiyou, they're all near the top of the list. So what that really means for us with the lack of real viable industry, and there used to be the timber industry, and there used to be a marijuana industry, and before that there was the gold folks, that it's a tough place to raise a family. And we don't have a lot of healthy family situations right now. So when you ask me about opportunity moving forward, of course we're going to talk about economics, right? But for tribes, the economics are about people, right? It's about, we had a transportation program for 20 years. And that transportation program served not only my tribe, but if you rode a bus out of Blue Lake, and the city of Blue Lake's next door, you rode that bus, it's our bus, and it connects right to the county, and you got continuous service throughout the county. And as the economy churned down in, post-marijuana, what you end up seeing is that the overall depression of the economy, we lost that bus service because we could no longer afford it. So, I look at it and say, some form of industry, there's this balancing act that we try to play as tribal leaders. Like, we want industry because we want healthy families and we want a future for our children, right? But on the flip side, we don't want to rush into something that's environmentally or culturally damaging to our beliefs or to our cultural resources. So there's a bit of that. But I'll tell you, like partnerships and opportunities in offshore wind, I think they're immense. I think that there's the opportunity for rank and file tribal membership to actually, those who maybe don't want to go to college, or maybe they don't know that they do. They can get a start in one of our programs. We've got partnerships across the county, Humboldt County Office of Education, Cal Poly Humboldt, CR. We all talk to each other. Our tribal education agency talks together with those folks. And we're actively, even right now, trying to develop those pathways so that we could get tribal members, out of a rut, into job training. So I think there's tremendous future there. It's tremendous future for families. It's a tremendous future because, look, everybody deserves the ability to buy a house. The median income in those counties up north is usually $45,000 to $54,000 dollars a year. That's median income, and the poverty rate's around 20%. So it's not a healthy situation, and we're not happy about it. But look, we do what we can. I think the opportunities are immense for tribal membership to be able to move, either get a job, participate in those programs, go to College of the Redwoods. There's an off-ramp there for them. Maybe they want to be an engineer, right? And they continue the pathway to Cal Poly to be able to do that. I'll also say, I don't want to take too long here, but we've got a long history, our tribes in the north, of partnering with other local governments. We're good at it. We make good partners. And I know I'll talk about that a little later on some of the other project development stuff that we're doing. But I see it as a tremendous hope for our region. The real question is, can we address some of these other issues? And I think we have time to do that, and we have time to do that now, but we need to get to work.
Thanks so much. Sam Cohen. Every time we talk, the Santa Ynez Band has developed another new exciting initiative. Can you talk about some of the things that we've talked about recently, the new Oceanographic Institute, the workforce training program, other things that might be in this space of socioeconomic development and structures that tribes are creating to be material participants in supply chain and the rest of the offshore wind industry cluster?
Sure, Jana, thank you. The Chumash people have a history that goes from Paso Robles all the way to Malibu and inland to Bakersfield. And so we naturally are concerned about leases off of Morro Bay. So we established the Santa Ynez Chumash Oceanographic Institute to kind of house our ethnographic and oceanographic experts in one place, and so that we can take our existing monitoring workforce and kind of create a new generation of ocean monitors so that we can better work with the leaseholders to make their projects environmentally better. All right, so Santa Ynez Chumash Oceanographic Institute, we hope will partner with other oceanographic institutes like the Monterey Bay Institute, and that will become the core of a West Coast oceanographic series of institutes to assist in the implementation of offshore wind. And the Oceanographic Institute has 501c3 status, which some corporations prefer to have a partner if they're going to be giving money to a nonprofit. As part of an unrelated offshore wind project, the Cademo or Floventus project off of Vandenberg Space Force Base, we entered into the first community benefits agreement for offshore wind on the West Coast. All right, this CBA, as we call it, enabled us to fund, or will enable us to fund, the at least half full-time employee for oceanography and a half full-time employee for archaeology. In addition, it had high road training program job education benefits, which we split two ways. The first is we're partnering with Allen Hancock College to create a certificate program and possibly a 2-year degree in offshore wind so we can create a trained tribal and non-tribal workforce. And second, we're funding internships for offshore wind. I am pleased to tell you we have 3 summer interns, one from Santa Clara University, one from Smith, and our first lawyer offshore wind intern for the summer. So we're very excited about that as well.
Fantastic. Councilmember Williams, I'm going to turn back to you. We had talked a little bit in preparation for this panel about material positioning in supply chains in this ecosystem. So with the full understanding that right now, that the Yurok tribe took a position of opposition to offshore wind based on some of the concerns and the topics we've been talking about. My question to you tonight is, are there conditions under which tribal economic enterprise development could occur with respect to offshore wind industries? And what are some of the contexts for that in your mind that you see? What are sort of like the conditions that would need to happen for that to be?
Well, the offshore, this project gets me really excited at times because I have this vision of, the Yurok tribe being a part of the supply chain. We have corporations that are about ready to come to maturity. We're in the 8A contracting arena. And so I'm looking at, we could be in the supply chain manufacturing something, whether it's metal, whether it's bolts, whether it's rubber, whatever it is. I see us being a part of that supply chain, also generating revenue for our tribal citizens, because we're not a gaming tribe. We don't have a lot of discretionary funding. We're dependent on the government, which makes it kind of tough. And so I'm looking at that as like an opportunity for future generations to have revenue, because as mentioned earlier, there's not a lot in our area. We're very, very rural, and the economy there, it's dependent on the government. If you don't work for the school system or the prison guard system or the county government, you're going to have a tough time making a living. And so I look at that opportunity. I also look at the workforce development part of that, to where we're actually making a profit, also giving our tribal workers a job. Now, I've already been actively recruiting in the junior high and the high schools for our tribal citizens to go to college, get that engineering degree, get that science degree, because this is waiting for you. I believe that some of our citizens, if we give them the right opportunities, they can be in this as a scientist or as an engineer. Those are the visions that I have myself. I look at, I get so excited on all the things I think that are possible for the Yurok tribe. But then I always get to the one part, the basis of our tribe, and it is our salmon. Everything stops at the health of our salmon. That's where all this dream and this uplifting good moment, it comes to our salmon. And our salmon have been devastated by the dams. And then also we're in the middle of a 20-year drought. And so the last 5 years, we haven't been able to have a decent fishing season. This year, we're not even going to be able to afford one fish per tribal member. 6,500 tribal members, and we only got 5,500 fish that is our portion of this year's fishery. And so when I go back to my people and I talk about all these dreams, these visions that I have, and these opportunities that are there for us, but what about our salmon? And that's where we come to, is where's that science at? I haven't been able to find that science that backs up. What does that look like to our salmon that are in such peril? And to many people, salmon may not mean a lot. It might be your sushi bars where you get close to salmon. But for us, if the government took every single dollar from us, if they didn't fund us any longer, I would always have a salmon to go and eat. I would always be able to feed myself. And so I take that back in, it was taught to me by my grandfather of when the government offers you money, don't take it. Never sacrifice your food for a small payment. And so for us, that's the number one, is salmon. I even went so far as to say, what if we could put in an agreement to where they help us rebuild our salmon stocks? For when 10 years from today, maybe our salmon will be able to sustain any type of negative effects. I've thought about that, and then the other factor is some of our people don't believe that we're going to benefit from any jobs. There's so much hopelessness of all the things that our Yurok people have lived through. You talk about resiliency. I want to explain what resiliency comes from for me. Resiliency comes from having to live through terrible times and have to hope that one day it's going to be better. That's what resiliency means to us. Because we lived in those dark times, in those dark places, where there was nothing there, no government for us, nobody helping us. And we had to hope our way to where we are today. We have to convince our tribal citizens that we're going to have jobs for them, that we're going to have this partnership. We also need to be on the regulatory side. We have to be able to have real-time data, not data that's left over from 2 months ago that they decided to let us see. We're a government, a federal government, just like Mexico, just like anybody else. We're equal. And so we do deserve an opportunity to be on the regulatory side to make sure that all of our interests are protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ramos, I'm going to turn to you. Continuing on in that same vein, what are you're a seasoned leader of economic enterprise development, done well by society and by the tribal membership. What are the conditions under which we see economic enterprise within the offshore wind industry going forward in a productive way? And 8A was brought up as an example, and we've talked about this from time to time, but 8A, I think, is, for all of its faults, it's really an interesting structure because it creates the support and the connectivity between tribal nations and the markets that has been successful in many cases. So just kind of teeing off of that, and what are your thoughts about material involvement in this industry, workforce development, the kind of supports we need?
Okay, yeah, I would first start by saying that in the history of Humboldt County, there's been the gold rush, there's been the timber rush, a little bit of fishing rush, definitely the green marijuana rush, right? And in all of those industries, over the past now 175 years, tribes always got the short end of the stick. During the gold industry, they hydro-sluiced, he had mentioned it, washed a bunch of sediment down into the rivers and buried the salmon beds. Early timber industry, and I'm not bagging the timber industry, they made changes, but they made changes because the state of California developed rules that made them make changes. But clear cutting really caused a bunch of other materials down into the rivers, and what did it do? It killed salmon, right? Marijuana, the marijuana bandits took caterpillars and flattened mountains and took over creeks and pushed dirt into creeks, causing damage. So every time there's an industry that pops up, it seems like we get our most precious cultural resource gets damaged, right? And so if you're hearing from us about, hey, look, we're concerned about salmon and offshore wind, that's the reason why. The other thing that happened with those industries is we were never participants in, particularly we'd like to be participants in the legal versions, right? We were always left out. And so the one of the questions that always is kind of out there as we move forward is like, hey, look, are we going to be able to participate moving forward and still keep some semblance of our tribal sovereignty? And I see, and people might be saying, well, what are you talking about? And what I'm talking about is, look, if I develop an 8A business or I have a Section 17 business, which Section 17s were developed from the 1934 Indian Reorganization Act, and they're corporations that the federal government allowed tribes to form that were outside their tribal governments, so that the government didn't have to be the corporation, that you could develop your own corporation, right? And they operate both on and off reservation, and they have certain tax advantages. And I'm wondering today, look, if I form a Section 17, and we have one, but if I have a subdivision of that Section 17, and it's operating with an industry partner or with somebody in this room who has a business, am I going to get in a fight with the state? Because the last time my tribe did that, we fought with the state of California for 10 years over both employment and tax issues, right? And so I look forward and say, well, and actually we fought the IRS too, but that's another issue, but it was over Section 17. So we're looking to participate, we're looking to have real ownership in businesses, and we're looking for real partnerships. And this is the same question that I posed to the Secretary of Interior and Secretary of Labor when they came to see us, up in Eureka. Look, we want to be participants this time. We want to have some real ownership in the process. We want to have some real ownership stake in the businesses that are developed. We know how to do that. We know how to build. I've got $80 million worth of infrastructure on my small reservation that we built over the last 20 years. I know how to build things. I know how to partner. But am I going to be allowed to partner, without a bunch of other interference, as the agreements are developed? And we have organized labor, the Local 49. So if you go to the event over at the Sheraton, that's a Local 49 out of here in Sacramento. That same union represents half of my employees at the Tribal Casino and Hotel. We have no problem with labor unions. We have a good working relationship. But sometimes when I see the PLAs, it all has nothing but state language and state civil regulatory authority language, right? And that's not the way that we operate. And I've raised this concern before, and I think we're going to be able to get through it. But there's barriers like that, right, that are going to trip us up as we go forward. End of the day, we're moving forward. We're building our own training facility, the TAM Resilience Center, right? $13 million project. Phase 1 is underway right now. It does not only job training, but all our buildings now, because of the climate crisis, have to have some Office of Emergency Services function. They all have to have smart water grid backup water, so we have the regular county water connection, and we have a 250,000-gallon tank that's piped and connected with a connector, so that if we lose county water, that we can still supply fire and drinking water to those facilities. So I think, looking forward, I think that's one of our biggest concerns, but I think it's one of those ones too that we can get over.
Mr. Cohen, I want to press in a little bit on the workforce training that the Santa Ynez Band has started. What are the sports we need for workforce training to go forward in a growth mode, and how do you see those opportunities dovetailing with the offshore wind industry?
Well, I don't mean to speak for the lessees, but I think a lot of them represented they would be training tribal members to work on their projects and got extra points. So I think it's a lease enforcement issue at the very least. In addition, they promised community benefit agreements for negative effects for local communities and tribes. So they got extra points for that as well. So the lessees both in Humboldt and at Morro Bay have made significant commitments to BOEM as part of that lease process. And so we are just trying to implement with local educational institutions some sort of simplified training program so that we can get students engaged early on so that they can participate in the process. Now keep in mind that these leaseholds, we're not going to see actual construction for a long time. We have at least 5 years of environmental review culminating in an EIS, and then there's a construction plan that has to get approved. So, I mean, technically, students starting now could have a master's degree, theoretically, by the time construction begins. But I think we need a shorter path to keep these students interested. And we have our own local labor unions, and they have excellent apprenticeship programs as well. Some of the, like the Vandenberg Wind Project signed a project labor agreement. I don't know if the other leaseholds have signed project labor agreements or merely agreed to provide prevailing wages, like under Davis-Bacon. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for training. Our tribe is very small, so I think we need to open this up to the other non-federally recognized tribes and get them trained and give them opportunities as well. And then eventually take this north, all right, and maybe kind of use it as a template for use at Yurok or one of the other tribes that are opposing offshore wind because they don't feel like they have economic opportunity. And so I think that we can make this work. I think that's the only, I think we're all concerned about the lack of information. It's just that at San Ynez, we like to participate in the process, learn the process, improve the process, and make for a better project. All right? And so we don't generally oppose right from the beginning. You have to really piss us off to get us to oppose.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think, you know, on that, I'm just going to segue from that great comment. A couple of things we've heard from tribal governments, whether in opposition or support or somewhere in between, is this need for more capacity, the need for more data and science, including indigenous knowledges, and the opportunity and potential for tribal scientists to be better interconnected with others. The Oceanographic Institute is a step forward in that arena. I guess we have a few more minutes, so I'm going to do one more question, which is completely off the script, which is, let's address the capacity issue.
Okay.
Just want to go down we'll just go in this order. Start with you, Sam. I know we just ended with you, but I'll start with you. What do we need for capacity? How do we get it?
I think it's a responsibility of the leaseholders to assist the tribes to engage qualified professionals so that tribes can participate in any environmental activities in real time, so that tribes can participate in the final environmental review in real time, and the tribes feel comfortable approving the project at the end of the environmental review process.
Great. I mean, yeah. Councilmember?
You know, for us at the Yurok tribe, you know, we're in the middle of creating our own Marine department currently. But one of the things that we've identified is You know, we're in a room of sharks, to be truthful with you. We're swimming in the shark water. When we talk about capacity, you know, we're looking at funding to find us a consultant or a scientist that can help us navigate these sharky waters. And I think that's something that the government should take a look at, because I think there's a playbook that's been in play for 500 years. And a lot of it is you could take advantage of indigenous communities by not giving them the knowledge they need to compete or to understand what's really going on. And I think it's time for the government to change that playbook, to level the playing field for us. You know, I mentioned earlier, don't leave tribal communities behind. You know, we have a lot to offer these communities, and they're starting to see that our traditional ecological knowledge is valuable. You know, we've been in this landscape for, I'm not going to say 10,000 years. I'd rather go 100,000, or since the beginning of time. We know where the sun sets. We know where the moon sets. We know how it affects the tides. We know what's happening in the water. We know all these things because we lived here. And so I just look at opportunities to change what the government's done, change that playbook, and bring us along for the ride.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, and I want to build on that by saying, you know, we've had conversations about internal capacity needed in tribal governments, and then external capacity that's needed in the form of technical assistance and other expertise that eventually could be knowledge transferred, but that isn't able to be delivered, you know, or made ready right now at the drop of a hat. So how are we thinking about the internal governmental capacity we need in energy and infrastructure, and what are some of the solutions we think that are?
So when you look at internal tribal capacity, a lot of times there's monies available, but you can't get to them. Right? They're on an island, but you have nobody to swim or build a boat to go get them. And it happens all the time. And actually, that's my situation right now. There's other monies I could be trying to chase down, but I have no capacity to do that. Secondarily, when tribes have capacity, internal capacity, great things happen. You know, we were the first solar microgrid in the state of California. That was the Blue Lake Rancheria, Schatz Energy Research Center, and the California Energy Commission. And the only reason we were able to do that, and the funding came from the CEC, is that we actually had enough, you know, enterprise money from gaming to actually pay a person to actually stay on it and go do that, because it takes 5 years, right? And most of us don't have 5 years worth of revenue for that person's salary to go put them on it and get it done. Today, there's 9 different tribes with solar microgrids across the state, and some of them are huge. Our own county has a microgrid that was based on our original model. And now we're in the process of having a 2.0 version, which looks a whole lot more like a regular electrical grid, that will inform a $100 million project for the Yurok, the Hoopa, and the Karuk. And that was all because we spent that initial money. So you can do a lot and do magic things moving forward if you can fund it in the beginning, and it's tough to do. Because look, I got housing, I got education, I got elders to take care of. The money's slim. But when you can get there. I think it's the same thing with offshore wind. If we have people, if we can afford to have internal staff that are on these projects, both I'd really like to have an economic development person right now. I'd really like one person dedicated nothing to offshore wind, but there's no way I can afford that. So, I mean, that's my answer. It works when you can fund it.
Yep. All right, thank you. So I think my directions are to include a question from the screen here. So I will include this one, and then I have a vision question for our very last question, and then drinks. Do you feel that the federal government and wind developers have included the tribal communities in the related processes If so, in what ways? And if not, how can we improve? And I'll go in reverse order.
I think it could have been better. It should have been earlier, and it should have been more comprehensive, and that there could have been a better strategy to roll out. And I think we're trying to figure that out now. I also think it's not too late, but I think we have work to do. That's my short answer.
Thank you.
For us, it's the same, it should have been done sooner, but once we got on the radar, they came and engaged us, had great conversations, came to our lands. We took them and showed them some of our most impoverished communities to show them what we're fighting for. And as this process has gone on and on, I have great relationships with them, and I'm looking forward to the partnerships.
Great, thank you. Sam?
I don't think the federal government intended to have a robust tribal strategy, but when Ynez, Chumash gets involved, we're pretty much like bulldogs. We just hold on to the ankle until they bleed to death. So we went through the 106 process, forced them into a programmatic agreement, became a signatory party, and then forced them to make all these environmental concessions. The wind developers, these are the first tribes they have ever seen or worked with in their history. And so I'm not making excuses for them. I think that they are unintentionally ignorant, and they're trying to hire people to kind of develop this expertise in the tribal area, and it's up to us to guide them to the right result, even if it hurts them a little.
Thank you. All right, last question, and then we'll wrap it up. It's a simple one, but I think it's more complicated than it seems up front. What would it look like if offshore wind is done well by the tribal communities, tribal nations, tribal governments?
Am I starting it?
Anyone can start. You want to start?
I'll start since you
All
guys
right.
been doing and got me in the middle. I'll get to start. When I think about what offshore wind could look like done correctly, it started with, the federal government at first. Respect the treaties. Respect the treaties that were set from their ancestors. And that's the first thing when we engaged with them, was they didn't honor the treaties from 1855. That pissed me off. And then it put me on a bad, I didn't really care for that group very much. But if they could engage early with tribal communities, they're going to be devastated, out of respect, And then second, I think to come at us with a plan of economic development, because we are really struggling with the economy, because everything's been taken from us. All the gold, all the timber, all the fish, and then, we're dying for economic development. That's what we need for our tribal citizens. If they would have come at us with a plan that included us, some of the labor agreements weren't very kind to us in the beginning. We've seen this playbook. We've seen it through the dams. And that's the first thing our tribal council mentioned, was this is the same thing they did with the dams. So we kind of got an understanding of what they were doing. They need to change that playbook and catch up to the times, because there's so many groups in today's society that are demanding recognition and respect, and we're no different. We're the same. And so I think if they would give us a little bit more respect and help bring us along with them, because when I look around, we're not the only ones that are trying to catch up. Most everybody in this room is trying to catch up to how fast this project is moving. And I think that's what really hurt the communities and created distrust, is that.
Thank you.
I think it looks like tribal participation from the start to the finish, so it looks like tribal, that our concerns are taken seriously through this development phase with all of the environmental and economic, or environmental and cultural resource concerns. That, there's ongoing monitoring that has tribal input. That there's ongoing, monitoring of both species and our other concerns. That, we have to talk about a plan to decommissioning, because there was never a talk about decommissioning on the Samoa Spit when it came to the pulp mill, and the county was left over with the brownfield. And we should get that. We should figure out what that looks like before they go out there. All of those things need to be considered top to bottom, the lifespan of the units, everything. And I think that if we had real participation, and I think that there's a movement to do that now, that those things could be planned, and it could be a cooperative effort, and we could move forward together. And I think it would be an instance where it's much more successful in the end.
Thank you.
We haven't talked about co-management structures, although it's in our title. So I just want to point out that anyone who, everyone's trying to avoid co-management by saying it's undefined. But I tell you, we are also involved in the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary, and we went to every marine sanctuary model and found a co-management structure in the Olympic Peninsula and Washington State, where 5 fishing treaty tribes co-manage the entire Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary in an intergovernmental policy committee. So we only know of 2 agencies that are involved in this project, BOEM and Bessie. And right between them, you can see the tribes, right? In some sort of MOU between Bessie and BOEM. BOEM takes it through environmental, Bessie takes it through construction. And we are co-managing both sides of this project as co-regulators with the federal government.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end it. This might be my favorite panel of all time. Thank you so much for joining us. Huge round of applause.